Hi there, and welcome to my review of Roman J. Israel Esquire. So, this is a film that's fascinating, to say the least. So Roman J. Israel Esquire is a film about Denzel Washington playing a socially awkward lawyer who basically gets unemployed and then realises that his whole socially progressive ideology and activism hasn't really led to anything, and then he basically undergoes this transformation where he basically becomes disenchanted with the world, embittered, cynical, and he gives up on his liberal and activist lifestyle and kind of descends into this world where he becomes selfish and various other things. I mean, it's an interesting premise. That premise alone is fascinating. The idea of a transformation from an activist to a cynic, or from a liberal to a conservative, or whatever you want to call the transformation into Roman J. Israel Esquire, is a fascinating transformation, and one I would love to see done much better than this film, because this film is flawed. It's really flawed. But as a premise, that's pretty solid. The biggest problem with this film is that it has all these ideas. So for example, it talks about the purity of activism. It talks about how if you're a cynical activist, you're actually a hypocrite, because you can't be an activist and a cynic. It talks about how idealism in many ways is pointless. And all these things are, yes, they're depressing and harsh, but they're also probably true. This also is probably true that idealism doesn't really achieve much in this world. That's probably the reality. However much I would love it to not be the case, that probably is the case. And so this film starts off with this and you're thinking this is going to be deep and like going to be a real stinging critique of stuff. It isn't. Fuck that. It just doesn't happen. He goes, nah, that kind of sucks. But, good people, they inspire good people. So, it cops out. It cops out so badly. Whatever happens in Roman J. Israel Esquire, it goes nowhere. So it starts off with this really harsh, cynical story, and then it just kills itself. It goes off into these twists, it becomes a bit of a thriller, and then it just goes straight towards happiness. It goes straight towards, well, good people will ultimately inspire good people, which is the most pointless message, because good people inspiring good people is not a statement that anyone cares about. Who cares if it's true or not? Good people inspire good people doesn't mean anything. You know, that's just a thing. Some people are inspired by other people. Cool. Like, that's such a neoliberal, pointless little critique of society that it's not even a critique, it's a society is ultimately good because good people do good things. So as a social commentary, Roman J. Israel Esquire just misses the belt by a mile. It has nothing to say. However, that's all on the side, you know, whatever, politics, politics, you know. The fact that the film is politically inept is just a sideshow, really. I mean, all it means is the film has no message and has no purpose, which, you know, some people disagree with the message if it had a message, so I mean, at least there's that. But you know, if it had a conservative message or a liberal message, at least it would have a message. Instead it just kind of has good people inspire good things, which is so like milquetoast and like, good people do good things. Like, go away. That's so terrible as an idea. Like, even if it's true or not, that's so bland and boring. Anyway, well, that's a complete side note. I'm just saying that makes the film pointless, so it's not worth seeking out, is my point. It makes the film pointless. However, the biggest problem is Roman J. Israel Esquire is just kind of boring. It's not very interesting, to be honest. It kind of has these philosophical moments which are interesting. There's some very interesting, long, wordy conversations which you go, oh, that's fascinating to look at that through a philosophical point. Well, I mean, once you realise that it's all pointless though, because the film isn't trying to say anything, you go, okay, screw that, that's boring. And it is pretty much boring. That's the biggest crime. There is positives, and those positives are pretty plentiful. One, the concept's really strong, and it is interesting. It is an interesting idea, regardless of whether or not the film ever does anything with it. The fact that the film is bland doesn't change the fact that the film is, at its core, interesting. It's an interesting idea, a man changing his viewpoint massively in a few days. That is a fascinating idea. The other thing is, Denzel Washington's great. He's Oscar nominated for this performance, and whilst it certainly isn't an Oscar nomination worthy performance in my opinion, it is a very good performance, and Denzel Washington is great as usual. So yeah, it's pretty solid. It has its moments, and I definitely think that it's not a film that is crushingly disappointing, but it squanders any great ideas it has because it just doesn't say anything. And not only does it not say anything, it takes its sweet time to get there, and it's pretty boring along the way. If it had really ended with a meaty idea at its core, I think it would justify the fact that it's a bit dull, but it doesn't. Instead it's dull, and then its message is bland. Because there's some stuff in there, it isn't a complete train wreck, but Roman J. Israel Esquire is a bad film. Have you seen Roman J. Israel Esquire? If so, leave me a comment. I'd love to read your thoughts. And if you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to hear more of my reviews, subscribe, because I post reviews all the time. And if you want to keep up with what films I'm watching, you can follow me on Letterboxd or on Twitter. And Roman J. Israel Esquire is a bad film.